After a terrifying round 7 for NRL fantasy, the team list gods have produced with some very interesting team lists and some guys that we want to talk about today. As we go through this, drop it out in the comments. What trades do you think you're making this week? How'd you go last week? Which player are you most excited to buy this week? Or who are you sitting on the fence about? So let's go into the first game here. Rabbitohs Panthers. I'm just going to do first up reactions. This is going to be a great game in real life, but the team list isn't super friendly from South Sydney. So we had Kaloa Matangi go out for 6 to 8 weeks last week. We've got Jacob Host and Michael Cheekham coming in. Now, Cheekham's already made his money for this year, which is the worst option for us in fantasy. And Jacob Host has some money in him, but he's a little bit of a plotter for fantasy. So there's every chance that he scores, 30 a week, sort of going from here. So now Jacob Host isn't the worst option. If you're looking at him there, he's going to have some time in the starting team. The risk is that Jai Arrow goes back to the edge because some of these guys on the bench, so Saluka Fafita, Hame Sele, David Moale, they're all pretty talented middles. They could eat more minutes. We could see Jai Arrow moving to the edge a bit more. On the other side of things, when we're looking at the Panthers, not too much change. So the one thing to note here is that Liam Martin's out of the team. He's done a hamstring injury there. It just means that Scott Sorensen goes back to that edge role. Hosking keeps his spot. Luke Garner played in reserve grade last week, so he's not really a threat to Hosking at this stage. He's on that extended bench, but I don't think you have anything to worry about if you're a Hosking owner. The plus here is if you bought Lindsay Smith, it means that you got out of jail a bit here. So Scott Sorensen went back to the bench, took that middle role from Lindsay Smith last week. He goes back into the starting team. It means that Lindsay Smith has some more time on that bench and should theoretically get some minutes in this South game. Next game here, and it's a juicy one. So a couple of great games to start the weekend for us. We've got Para and the Broncos. For this game, this could be anything. I mean, the Broncos, if you have Broncos players in your fantasy side, treat this as a game where the Broncos could potentially have a lot of attacking opportunities, especially if you have Reece Walsh sweeping around the edges. Para's edges haven't been rock solid to start the year. They were solid against the Dogs last week, but the Dogs have had a lot of injuries, so I don't know how much I'm going to count that. On the team list, interesting to note here, Sean Russell, Hayes Dunster, both keep their spots. Hayes keeps his spot even though Bailey Simonson is available this week. If you're looking at a minimum price cash out, Hayes Dunster will play all 3 major bye rounds, but he is absolutely terrible for fantasy. He'll average not much. I mean, he's not a particularly noted try scorer. He doesn't really get that work done that you want from your wingers there. So for fantasy, he's probably going to be a guy that you're trading out for 300K at some point. Like, he's just not that option there. But he is minimum price and he has played the major bye rounds. So if you like it and if it works for your trades, you can do that. Dylan Brown's been a bit hit and miss. A lot of mid-40 scores down the stretch here. He hasn't had that explosive attacking game. And Dylan Brown and Sean Lean are still working on that connection as well. So that could click any time now. That could be really interesting. Mitch Moses has been the better half by far, though, but a lot more expensive at this stage. So they're both viable options. In the forward pack, last week we saw Bryce Cartwright move back to the bench. We saw Madison go to the edge, and we saw Jermaine Hopgood come into the starting side. They've gone back to the original formation. Also, Hodgson's back into the team. So if you're looking at Brandon Hands after he started last week, he goes back to his normal role. Unless there's a Hodgson injury or a big change, I don't see anything there. If you've got any of these power forwards, if you've got Cartwright, for example, I'm probably thinking about selling Cartwright now. I just think his role was a little inconsistent, and he's made his money. He's done his job. If you've got Hopgood, Hopgood's a bit trickier because he's probably going to find minutes. If you held him this long, no, I think he's still probably a trade because he's just so highly priced and you can get such good players for the money you've made on Hopgood. But he could be a pod if you hold on. I'm going to have to do some more analysis here, but I've sold Hopgood myself. But if you did have Hopgood at this point, he plays all 3 major buys. Yeah, I'm on the fence with that one, but I think he's probably a sell. On the Broncos side of things, Reece Walsh probably plays Origin this year, or he might be just in the Origin squad, but that could be something to think about down the stretch. Right now, he's still in great form, so keep rolling with that. Don't touch any of these outside backs for the Broncos. Corey Oates is back. Doesn't really change much for fantasy, but it's big for the Broncos. Ezra Mam's in. Adam Reynolds. Adam Reynolds is solid. Adam Reynolds is that guy that's going to average between 49 and 52 every year. If you want a half and you have about 700K, not a bad option. The forward pack is pretty unchanged. There's not too much to report here. We've got Tom Flegler, who comes back in. No one was really buying up those guys who were taking the minutes there, so I'm not super fussed. Payne Haas is still that guy right now. Pat Carrigan could be a sell. We'll have a look at him and buy hold sells later as well. That's in the comments too. Which players in your team are you most frustrated by, and who are you thinking might be a sell for you this week? So let's go into the next game here. Doggies and the Sharks. Ooh, the Dogs have been in a bit of a tough situation lately. A lot of injuries to their team. We've had a guy, Paul Almotti, who has shown a lot of really positive signs. He's had to move to the wing twice in recent times, and he is that first drop guy to move to the wing. So I'm still really high on Alamotti. I still think that as a center, he could average 40 this year, maybe even more than that. But if he keeps going to the wing, he's just not producing fantasy points on the wing. So if you need to sell Alamotti to make your trades work, you can do it. I personally think that at some point this season, we'll see Alamotti closer to $600,000. I think he's got serious value in him. I think just the way he plays, that try that was disallowed last week where he threw a defender across him, I think it was Penasini, and just brushed off another guy and scored. There was an obstruction earlier in the play, but he just looks strong. And, you know, with these young guys, that chemistry comes together. He hasn't scored a try yet. I'm high on Alamotti. Declan Casey is a bit dodgy. You got Carraz, who's out for 3 weeks. You got Adokar, who's about 6 weeks now. I'm not that into moving on Casey. He's $277K, so he's not minimum price either. I don't rate it. If you've got Hayes Perham, trade him out. Matty Burton is really frustrating to own right now. And his recent scores have been okay, but he's been bailed out by some big attacking plays. Saying that, the Dogs have really good fixtures. So I was considering potentially trading out Burton just because he doesn't play that round 13 bye. He's playing pretty average footy right now. But he's got really good fixtures. The Dogs, look at the Dogs' next 5 games, and the Sharks game is the toughest one they have, but even the Sharks are a pretty expansive side who can leak some points. So Burton's got 5 games coming up before the round 13 bye where he could potentially produce some serious attacking stats. So I'm holding the faith with Burton, but if you traded him, I don't mind that either. Tavita Pangai Jr. is one that Harry actually messaged me about before, and it's juicy. It's juicy with Tavita Pangai. A lot of people are talking about him. He's a PPM machine. He came into last season with a lot of expectations, and he's coming to this season with next to none. He played pretty good footy on the weekend against Parramatta, and there's no one that's going to eat his minutes. Look at this bench. Josh Reynolds, Jaden Ockenbaugh, Andrew Davey, Ryan Sutton. He's got alongside him. Look, Max King is that guy. Max King's going to play 70 minutes a game. He's a freak. But Fatal Mariner probably won't play 80 at lock. Yeah, Pangai's going to get you 50 minutes, probably 50 points with attacking stat upside. And if they're a bit desperate as well, that could be good for him too. Pangai could be an option. There's risk there because he could re-aggravate that injury, get suspended. He doesn't play the round 13 bye. But he's a guy with some upside. He's about 600K. Really nice price. The rest of the team, I mean, Preston, keep riding Preston. Keep enjoying Preston. He's got more money to make. Max King's, if you had better buys, I'd consider him. Reed Marnie, I'm not reaching for money. He's sort of been really rocks and diamonds for fantasy and real life. Faitala Mariner, if he stays at lock, I'm just not that keen. If they moved him to the edge, then he's a guy that we're looking at buying straight away. But as a lock, playing less minutes, not keen. Sharks here, the whole Sharks backline, I'm probably not really interested in, except for Nico Hines at 7. Nico Hines is that guy, 73 points last week. Hines has some really nice fixtures coming up as well, and this is one of them. Hines is definitely the best captain of the round. He should carve up Dogs. So easy choice there with my captain this week. In the forward pack, Cam McInnes keeps that starting lock roll. Dale Finucane's out for another 2 weeks, and Toby Rudolph's out for another, still 3 months. So Cam McInnes is going to be a great option. And if you didn't get him last week, he could be a guy by this week. Going through the rest of the pack, I wouldn't be tricked by anyone else here. I mean, a guy like Hamilton ULA, for example, he's got some attacking stat upside, but he does have those games where he gets 20 points for you. So don't go there. Blake Braley, not really. The Cora, Wilton, they're just a little too far away from being keepers for mine. On the bench, I wouldn't go to Hazleton. People are talking about Hazleton a bit because he's at that low price, but don't do it. They're going to have their middle forwards back. Well, Dale's going to be back soon anyway, so there's no need to do it. Next game here, Cowboys and the Knights, and this is going to be a juicy one for real life. I'm tipping the Knights to win this game. I think they're just in much better form. The Cowboys have been really dodgy. So what can the Cowboys do to fix their woes from last week? I want to point to the forward pack first because I think the back line has nothing for us with fantasy. So on the forward pack side of things, last week we saw Jake Granville play 67 minutes as a middle forward, not as a hooker, as a prop/lock. This week, we see a team where Jason Taumalolo is out for 4 to 6 weeks, and we see Jordan McLean come into prop, Ruben Cotter coming off the bench and right into that starting lock role. So if you're looking at Granville, 267K is a nice price. The Cowboys have fantastic buys, but I'm not loving him on the bench there. I would never put him in my 17 this week. There's every chance that he scores less than 20 points this week. Jermaine Tanua-Brown, Mitchell Dunn are there as well. Cotter can play bigger minutes. I think Granville will probably play about 40 minutes this week, and his PPM probably you'd expect about a 25 kind of score, but he could go lower than that. And yeah, I'm not loving it. And the other thing is this Newcastle side is a big forward pack too, so yeah, it's tough to throw him in the middle role. I'm steering clear of Granville, but I can see why you would get him. And if you do buy him in Origin, Jeremiah Nanai and Ruben Cotter will both be missing for those Origin weeks. So you get 2 games where Granville probably plays that 60-minute role. On the Knights side of things, look, Kalen Ponga's back. Kalen Ponga is a guy we should all be watching. He's got a very high break-even this week, so let it ride this week, see how he goes. But if he looks good this week, he's a guy you're going to get for about 450K, which for Kalen Ponga's stature in the game is absolutely insane. The rest of the back line here, they came back to earth a little bit last week. A few of these guys, like Greg Marzus, your Dane Gag guys, Lockie Miller, who people were looking at. I'd probably keep riding them. I mean, the Cowboys is a pretty nice fixture for them this week. Cowboys haven't been that great. You could probably keep riding them. Whatever rationale you used to buy Greg Marzu is still true. So if you did buy him, you probably kind of have to stick with your logic. And when you're considering these guys as, do I hold or do I sell this guy? You need to think back to the frame of mind you're in when you bought that guy, and you can't just look at the recent score. So Greg Marzu, when you bought him, you were saying, he's probably going to get 200 meters a game. He's going to score a lot of tries. Awesome. Today, you're looking at him and you're going, he had a low score against Penrith. You might lose some cash. Go back to that original rationality. Are those original reasons for having him still true? There might be a reason to hold him. But at the same time, if you can move him on and you get someone like a Hines or you get some other weapon there, maybe a Tedesco who has nice fixtures, then you can pull the trigger on that too. In the forward pack, we've got a few changes. So Kurt Mann comes into the starting side. Great news for Phoenix Crossland. Phoenix, he had some minutes threat when he came into that role, but if Kurt Mann's starting at lock, the way I see this panning out is that Kurt Mann will play most of his minutes at lock. There's probably a good chance that we see Jacob Safidi come on it's probably for Leo Thompson. So that negates that component. Matt Croker and Jack Hetherington come in. There's a chance that we see one of them come into the lock role. Kurt Mann moves to hooker to potentially spell Phoenix Crossland. They could do a few things here. I think Phoenix is pretty solid for his 60-minute role in this team. I wouldn't expect him to score 49 every week because he scored a try last week and a lot of things went right in that game, but he should probably average about 40. So Phoenix Crossland at 400K, he's not the worst. I'm not breaking my team to get him personally, but he should make some cash. I'm more interested in another hooker that we're going to talk about from the Roosters named Brandon Smith personally at a similar price, but he's an option there. Tyson Frizzell, it's too late on Tyson Frizzell. We told you to buy Tyson Frizzell when he was 600K. He's now like closer to 700. You're paying full price at that point. He has some injury risk. Don't chase the points. Try and find the next Tyson Frizzell who's dropped some points. And that's what we talk about Kalen Ponga, right? Where he's dropped some money. Yeah, you're sweet. Rest of the team, not super interested in the bench. There's nothing going on there. Now we got the Dolphins and the Titans, and this should be a fun game for real life. On the Dolphins side of things, Robert Jennings is still in. Is Tessie New on the extended bench? Tessie New is not on the extended bench. Okay, I thought he might be back soon. I heard someone saying he might be a bit longer. Don't get Robert Jennings. It's not a great fantasy scorer and a lot of job security. The rest of the back line, it's a bit late to get Nick Rima now, and his scoring hasn't been great anyway. Nick Rima probably only has 2 more weeks before Milford comes back, so I wouldn't do that. Isaiah Katoa is finally performing for us. That's great. That's great news. Hamaso, we'll talk about him on buy, hold, sell. I said 3 weeks ago that we're probably going to be selling him soon. That time is coming, but the Titans is not a bad fixture if you do want to hold him and start him at center. So that'll be a deeper conversation we need to have. In the forward pack, I mean, Herman Ese comes in to start. Last week, that was Ray Stone in that role. Ray Stone played great last week. He scored about 39 points, but his minutes are just a bit dodgy. Like, you get Jesse Bromwich is back in here. You got Felice Kafusi comes back. Kenny Bromwich is gone. Kenny Bromwich will be back in 1 or 2 weeks. Like, Jared Wallace, Mark Nichols. I don't see the pathway to enough minutes for Ray Stone to be relevant, so I still would steer clear on Ray Stone. Lemuelu has been a terrible disappointment for us in fantasy the last few weeks. I mean, he's playing decent footy in real life, but he just misses a lot of tackles down the stretch in games. So he's a guy you hold, and I mean, Titans isn't a bad fixture for him. They can leak some points to back rowers. Hold on, see if he can improve. I got nothing else for you. On the Titans side of things, Jed Campbell keeps his spot. He is still a trap because AJ Brimson is on that extended bench. AJ Brimson can go back this week. And even if he doesn't, it'll be next week. Cam Pereira has a nice low break even. I think it's around that 10-point mark. He will make a bit more money, I'd say. He's probably a guy you could think about starting in this game as well. The Dolphins can leak to a winger, and Cam Pereira scored 4 tries in a trial against the Dolphins. Not that that means he's going to score 4 tries this week, but he could potentially pop up for a few more tries. Not the worst option. Jojo Fafita. What is Jojo Fafita's price? I actually don't even know. I'll keep talking while I'm finding this, but the other guy is Tanner Boyd. Jojo Fafita's 453k. Don't do it. Tanner Boyd has been scoring well. If you have Tanner Boyd, he's a hold at the moment. He's playing great footy. He's got good fixtures. He's scoring between 40 and 50 points for you. Ride that wave. Enjoy him. And with Kieran Foran as his halves partner, he's doing all the kicking. In the forward pack, Dave Fafita is a guy you could target. I've had Fafita all year, and he hasn't scored a try yet, but he's still averaging very highly around that 60-point mark. So Fafita's a guy you can get at a pretty good price. Probably doesn't play Origin. He's a very juicy option, Fafita. The rest of this pack, I'm not sort of super keen on Tino. I mean, Fodawaker's been improving. Fodawaker's a guy you probably look at in your draft leagues. He's maybe got to target in trades, but I'm not buying Fodawaker. He probably plays Origin as well. Stimson is putting in some shocking fantasy performances recently. Don't touch Cruz leaving. Cool name, but he's not a guy to buy. Scoring a few tries. I'm not interested in the rest of this bench at all. Then we got the Tigers and the Seagulls. It's pretty juicy. And yeah, Tigers team. I mean, there's a few things to talk about in this game, but Tigers team list is a change. So Brenton Aiden goes out of the team, which means we see Asu Kapawa go into center. We see Charlie Staines go into wing, and then we see Dream Bula. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Let me know in the comments from the night. The Dream comes into fullback. That's kind of interesting. He could potentially be a guy that keeps a spot. There's so much risk. There's so much risk with this Tigers team. Like, do they keep this formation? Charlie Staines had a good game last week at fullback, and he's out of the team. He's out of that spot now. He's moved to the wing. So, Dane Laurie's on the bench, and he's a guy that they really rate as well. Dream's 230k. So that's the upside there. But it's risky. It's really risky. And I've already got Tommy Talau sitting on my bench personally. So I don't know if I want another Tigers benchy sitting there. Brandon Wakeham comes in to Dewey's spot. That's the worst outcome we could have had for fantasy. He's not really relevant. He could average a bit more on these price stat, but I'm not interested. Forward pack. There's not too much to talk about. I mean, Isaiah Papali'i is good. The Tigers aren't playing that first major buy round, so I'm just not reaching for any of these guys. John Bateman will end up at a nice price at some point. We'll probably be buying John Bateman maybe round 14. Think about that. On the bench, not interested. Tommy Talau comes into number 17. Look, he probably comes into the team with some sort of change on game day. Just knowing how the Tigers have been, that's kind of what I'm expecting. It's based on absolutely nothing. And it's probably more hope than anything, but I kind of hope he does that. On the Manly side of things, look, Tom Trbojevic, if you have him, you're really frustrated and you hate yourself. Tommy Turbo is going to put on a show this weekend. It's a Sunday game, 4 p.m. So it's not the earliest, but Sunday day footy. Tommy Turbo against the Tigers. New backline combinations. It's not a recipe for success in terms of their defense. I think Turbo should put on a show. DCE put on a show. I'm not buying any of this backline for Manly. There's talk that Talau wants to go to Manly. Maybe he starts at centre there. That's not the worst thing. Joshy Schuster, still not interested for fantasy. Forward pack, Bullimore comes into that edge back row spot with Tuolangi out. He's 400k. It's not worth talking about, really. Finu comes onto the bench over Weeks or Cooper Johns. I don't think it really matters that much. Yeah, there's not too much to talk about with Manly. I just think Tommy Turbo is a guy you got to hold because they've got some nice fixtures coming up. Next game here, the Roosters and the Dragons. This is always a fun game in real life. I think this will be a game where a lot of the forwards score really well. A lot of tackles made. Just a lot of sort of bash it out kind of game because it's a game they're both very proud of. So in this Roosters team was first thing. We've got Sammy Walker out of the team. That's crazy. Sammy Walker's out. Joey Manu goes to 6. Paul Moravsky goes to center. Don't go buying Moravsky. I guess if you had Sam Walker, you probably sell at this point. Didn't score great last week either. Joey Manu is always a guy that we should be keeping an eye on. And the thing with Joey Manu, I was going to find he's around 600k right now. But for Joey Manu, he scored 25 last week. Yeah, so 25 points last week, 47 the week before, 35, 38. He's dropped in price quite a bit. So he's down from, what was his starting price? He's down 123k. So he's down from 730k to 607k. Dropped 37k last week, which, yeah, you can grab him. You can wait a week. He was in my plans for round 14. I was kind of hoping he'd keep dropping some money and I get him after the first buy round because the Roosters don't play then. But if you want to get him now, he's not a bad option. He's very cheap and look, St. George is a great fixture. So, yeah, that's kind of juicy. In the forward pack, Brendan Smith is 467k. That's nice. That's really nice for a starting hooker who's played 60-plus minutes the last 3 games. Hasn't seen any injuries, really, that I've seen. Let me know in the comments if I'm getting that wrong, but that's interesting. Angus Crichton, he's back. Don't buy him for fantasy right now, but that's juicy. Tupanua's on the bench as well, so that could potentially hit his minutes or Butchers. Get to see how that plays out. That's it for the Roosters. I mean, Tedesco's a guy who, just like Manu, he's dropped in price. Could go explode now as well. On the Dragon side of things, I'm not that fussed about most of it. If you've got Tyrell Sloan, he could have a tough game against the Roosters this week, but he scored well for you last week, so keep riding that cash train. Ben Hunt, I said not to buy him after his big score. He shit the bed last week. He'll probably come back and, yeah, he's up and down, Ben Hunt, so I wouldn't do it. He's got Origin and everything like that. The forward pack's weird. So we see Jaden Sewer out. We got Ben Murdoch-Masila back in. A lot of people were hoping Toby Couchman might be that guy who'd usurped Murdoch-Masila as an edge guy. Looks like he hasn't. That sucks for Couchman owners. You got to probably sit on him at this stage and just see what happens. The interesting part, though, for this pack is Jack DeBellin. So he's about 600k. If he starts and plays 80 minutes or 70-plus minutes even, he's a guy that you can rely on to average 55 for the year kind of thing. So he's just like McInnes. It looks like he's taken that role. He's pretty cheap right now. He will probably make money this week, but I'm probably buying DeBellin myself, so that is delicious. All right, next game, the Storm and the Warriors. This will be closer than people think, I think. From the Storm side of things, backline, nothing too interesting there. Forward pack, Sofa Solomona comes back, which is nice for them. It doesn't really touch fantasy for us. Probably means Josh King might see a few less minutes just because Sofa Solomona is so established in this team, but Kamika's out, so pretty balances out. Eli Katoa is a guy where you could think about trading him. The question is with Eli Katoa, because he has buys around 9 and 13, and this whole Storm team do. Is Katoa a keeper for you? So he's averaged 49. He hasn't had any tries. He's close to a keeper. You throw in a few more attacking stats, and he maybe averages 55 kind of thing. He might be a keeper. I think you either trade Katoa in the next 2 weeks, or you keep him for the majority of the season. They're sort of your two options in my eyes. I've probably got him as a hold right now, but I need to review that more. Lera is pretty solid too, but he's a guy you can trade if you need to make cash as well. On the Warriors side of things, Nickel Clock's had a shocker last week. He's still there. You could potentially exploit the Storm. He could be a guy you trade out. He's made some money. He's going to have to really bounce back, but he does play around 13, has the buy around 12, so not bad to have. Shawnee Johnson had a bit more of a normal game last week, but still rock solid. Dylan Walker, I'm not buying. Forward pack, Nia Corey comes back in. A lot of people asking me about Josh Curran. Don't do it. Don't do Josh Curran. Nia Corey is starting now. Josh Curran's on that bench. He's not going to get the minutes. It just seems he's dropped down the ranking orders this year quite a bit. Jazz Tavanga is pretty dodgy. I wouldn't be buying him, but not a bad guy to have in your draft league. Yeah, look, that's team list for this week. So let me know in the comments what trades you're thinking of making, and we'll be doing buy, hold, sell on Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. and a bunch of other fantasy content. So make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.